Hello. It's an odd thing, words. Why am I a Christian? Or why I am a Christian? I feel that this was predestined for me, as from a child, Christmas and baby Jesus were everything, or my most vivid young memories of family special times. We lived in a small village called Gilmerton, just outside Edinburgh. And I think these pictures are one of the best scenes in the world. And from our house, I saw these every morning. We lived about 3 miles outside Edinburgh. We lived in a small village called Gilmerton, just outside Edinburgh. Jump a few years to life at my secondary school. Scottish schools were harsh. The terror of the belt meant I asked God on every school day to save me from it. Get a French spelling word wrong, and the belt came out. So, my family, we lived in a prefab, super modcom home of that era. This is very much like, I couldn't find the photos of my home because they're shut away in a cupboard somewhere and I couldn't get to them, but this is very much how it looked. So my family, we lived in a prefab super modcom. I'm from a loving, happy family. My mum, Georgina, a Geordie, and Tommy, my dad, lovely dad. My mum was a WAF in the war, and my dad was a soldier decorated by the King for bravery in the war. I came along a year later, and my twin sisters 5 years after that. This picture is myself there with the twins, and this is a little bit older with our cousin in, actually I think that would be in Kirkcaldy in the area. In relation to my sisters, there was nothing Christian about me, because twins always have each other, and I'm sure I was pretty awful to them. But we all had a happy childhood with trips to the cinema with our dad. Films were his love. And jaunts to the seaside of Fisher Row, a small harbour and beach on the edges of Edinburgh. A specific time when I thought of Jesus, or shall I say, a deepening of faith time, was during my 14 to 16 years. My mum and I used to go to a revival kind of meeting held on Sunday evenings in the local scout hut. A wonderful, elderly, gentle lady called Mrs. Alexander ran this. People were truly saved and gave their testimonies, a bit like this summer series. The music was choruses and sometimes clappy, very emotional, and it was then that Jesus came into my heart, and he has been there pretty much ever since. However, as the wont of the day, I was 17 or 18, it was important for a girl to go to church just in case you were getting married. And my best friend Marion and I joined the Church of Scotland and used to go regularly every Sunday morning. This was my first real experience of going to church. Then Marion got a boyfriend, and I got new work friends, and we discovered the lure and excitement of 60s music. The cavern-type clubs and the Beatles, Edinburgh was no different to any other British city in this respect. 4 of us best pals decided we'd go to live in London, moving from one capital city to another to live. As it happened, when I was about 20 on a holiday to Richmond with my best friend, I met a really great young man called David. When I got home to Edinburgh, we wrote to each other. David found us a flat in Balham. Although us girls were only aged 20 and a bit, we felt very grown up. However, to coin those special words of Jane Austen, well, listener, I married him, that is David. So in order to get married, I joined the church on the Green in Richmond, as it was close in preaching to the Church of Scotland, and Richmond was a favoured haunt. We married in 1966. This is us at our wedding, and about a week before England won the World Cup. We watched it on a rented TV. This is my mum and dad, my 2 sisters, and they look pretty trendy for the time, I tell you. Anyway, we watched the World Cup on our rented TV in our own flat. What with working, commuting to town, and being married, I tried to get to church often, but I think I got a bit lost in my Christian life. We moved to Battersea, where David came from, to a super flat at the top of Lavender Hill. We then found out we were going to be parents. My daughter was christened in Richmond, and 2 years later, so was my son David. But then we had saved and bought a very nice home in Tolworth. We continued to attend Richmond Church. A very kind elder would pick me up and take me to church. However, it was too difficult to continue, as David worked shifts, so I left, and I didn't go to any church for a few years. Life was good as the early years went by. We had a menagerie of pets: Margie the dog, a wild cat, Tweety Pie, our talking budgie, 2 goldfish, and eventually 13 guinea pigs and about a dozen gerbils, all from 2 boy gerbils. A life spent feeding them all, but thankfully the pet club took the gerbils and guinea pigs to new homes. Also, about this time, my sisters and their husbands, my mum and dad, emigrated from Scotland to Australia. It's my mum and dad in Australia, and then with my dad's sister. They settled there happily. Then my first real need for God came when my statuesque mum arrived back in London after a couple of years, a true shadow of her former self, and very ill. They stayed with us, and on her seeing my GP, he intimated to me that she was very ill and unlikely to survive. Now, I believe a true miracle came for her and for me. I prayed to Jesus almost without stop, bombarding him with prayers, asking for healing for my mum. She went into Kingston Hospital and they took away 4/5 of her stomach. She came home to us to recuperate, and eventually she and Dad went back to be with my sisters in Australia. She loved England, but my dad now loved Oz. I truly believe this was my miracle, and I thank God for it. We left Tolworth and moved to New Malden. I joined the United Reformed Church on the roundabout with a lovely minister there called Michael, and I can't remember his second name. I was happy there. I was a church sidesman. Then 2 things happened very close in time. At home, our lovely Labrador Margie had to be put to sleep, which devastated us all. And close at this time, my dad died in Australia. I was bereft, but couldn't work out how I felt more sadness for our dog than for my dad. Michael, our minister, came to visit me and helped me with prayer to put this in context. He pretty much said it wasn't wrong grieving more for my dog. My dad, who I loved, was far away, and Margie, our dog, was immediate. It helped to have this said. I have never been good with death. Some can cope better, but for me it is difficult. I continued to go to church, and it gave me the strength for each week ahead. Now, our marriage was good, and I have to change this because my daughter was in the audience, as you might say, this morning, and our children okay, and she said, just okay, Mum. So our children were good too. When something happened where I needed God and asked for another miracle. My husband was expected home from work about 7ish one Friday evening, and as time wore on, he did not come. When I became perturbed as the late evening wore on, I started to pray. The only words I could think of were, the Lord's my shepherd, my go-to prayer. All evening I kept thinking, any minute he'll be home. But not so. By early morning I had rung the police, but there was no news. Then very early on Saturday morning, a policeman arrived. My husband David had had a very bad accident, and it was touch and go. I tell you, those police drivers really can drive. And we were at St. George's Hospital in no time. My many prayers had been answered, and though very ill, David would be okay. And he recovered after a goodly time in hospital. Nothing will alter my belief in the power of prayer and the miracles. Our lives continued happily. Now, over the years since I married, I'd been taking O&A levels yearly, first at day and then night school. And when my son David went to university, so did I. On the first day at Kingston Poly, I met my best friend, Diana Perkin. I should have met her, she's now my best friend. We were both on a history degree course. Of course, I've got another best friend here, Diane Elston, so I don't want to upset anybody. So on the first day at Kingston Poly, I met Diana. We were both on a history degree course. We have been friends pretty much ever since, with many life changes after our graduation, too many to go into now. My husband and myself spent about 3 years in Australia, hoping our children would join us, but they did not, because new things had happened in their lives. We returned from Australia and settled back into our home. My friend Diana, like myself, had a busy life, both of us with work and family. But we tried out various evening classes such as Egyptian history and such. Then, you could say God was on watch, as a local regular churchgoer told us about a new young vicar at Christchurch, that's Stephen, and the Alpha course there. Definitely God-given advice here. We came to the evening Sunday services, always in the lounge, and joined Alpha. We were very questioning, always, and I think sometimes, a bit of a pain. Eventually, a good few years ago now, some of us were confirmed and became true members of Christchurch New Malden. It has been a good faith journey, and to almost conclude, I must say how important home groups have been for friendship and Bible knowledge. From these Bible study groups, I found the verses of Philippians, where we are told not to be anxious, and it comes to me often in times of stress or worry for simple and big concerns. However, one more hurdle in my life. My lovely husband, David, died unexpectedly 4 years ago. A terrible shock to my family and myself. The help, caring, and love I have had, and my family, from so many at church cannot be counted. It was so much. Happening at the start of COVID was doubly hard. Stephen coordinated with my family and did a lovely service for them and my grandchildren. I had a broken hip that I was recovering from and was unable to attend. Not much more I can really say. I believe I am being cared for and in God's hands, and that is why I really am a Christian.